Welcome, everybody. This is Dave Bailey, President and CEO of Arctic IT. I'm joined with a couple other folks at Arctic IT, namely Phil Jackson, our CIO. We're talking to you today, of course, about mobilizing a remote workforce and some of the challenges that we all face as a business. Some of you that have joined us today are clients of ours. Some of you are new or special guests. So welcome, and thank you for taking time out of your day. We've had a tremendous amount of interest in this, and we are happy to take an opportunity to hopefully help most of you at least take one thing at a minimum away from the time we spend with you here on working more productively from home and some of the tips and tricks that we use and maybe some of the assistance we can provide to you. As you know, we are well aware of many of the challenges COVID-19 has presented to not only our business, your business, and that extended network of businesses that we all depend on. Unprecedented amount of impact. So it's put a lot of our friends and families in tough spots in a relatively short period of time without a lot of opportunity to prepare for something like this. So at a minimum, we have an army of really technically talented people, and we thought that we'd find some way to pay it forward, if you will, offer a little community service where we think we can to help maybe make a difference and help you stay productive or at least engaged with both your employees and your customers, depending on the type of line of work you're in. There are many different collaboration tools that we use. One of the tools we're talking about, we're using GoToWebinar right now. It's a meeting tool that we use periodically for different events that we do. We also use Teams. There are a few of us that use Zoom as a meeting technology, depending on whether it's, believe it or not, outside the US. Zoom is a pretty popular tool. We're going to talk to you about some best practices specifically to a remote workforce. We do most of our work through the Microsoft Teams application, so we'll touch on that. There is nothing for us in this hour together to sell you or influence your purchase of. This is just an example of some of the different best practices we find as an organization that thankfully worked remotely most every day. We are a little over 100 folks at Arctic IT scattered throughout 25, 26 states in the United States, with brick and mortar offices in Anchorage, Alaska, and Plano, Texas. So the majority of our workforce does work remotely, and we're either on a client site traveling or we work from home offices. So we thought we'd take some of our own internal best practices and share those with you as we go through the deck today. So any questions, of course, as Mary said, go ahead and put those in the chat window, and I'll answer them as I can. So talk about best practices, the app we use, how to use the app in general, how is a remote working app integrated into the other applications that you use specific in the Office suite, and where to find some additional training is really what we want to make sure you have access to today. So best practices. For a lot of us that have never had to do this before, it's one thing to say that we've worked from home once in a while, or maybe even on a regular basis. The big challenge here, and this is a great picture, is that you're trying to work from home and then you have all your children at home as well, depending on how many you have. That could be a little bit more stressful or less stressful. And then your spouse might be working from home as well. So there's a very different capacity for us to navigate all that. So it is really important to know that there will be frequent disruptions. There's only so much you can do. I think it's really important that you understand that this is stressful for everybody in the household, and the people you're trying to collaborate with in that workspace, if you're trying to work remotely, are also probably dealing with the same thing. So you have all of that stacked onto this effort. So be cognizant of that. It is not a simple thing to navigate, and not many of us have that deep experience of being specifically told to work from home full time. That is a new experience for a lot of people. Little things, make sure your printer's working, A lot of us can go through day by day and not care too much about the printer. We don't use a lot of paper, but all of a sudden working from home with the kids needing to print schoolwork out and somebody else, make sure your printer's working. Make sure you schedule some breaks. It's really important to pop out of your office, spend some time with the kids, check in on them with their homework, maybe have breakfast, lunch, and dinner with the family so that they have a touch point, and you're not all isolated from each other, and you have some communication. But make sure you schedule it. Don't just have it happen haphazardly, if you will. It is important, especially if your spouse is working from home, that you're neighborly. Some of you might share office space, or you might not have two offices. You might have a dining room table, a kitchen table. Be neighborly, just the way you would be in a workplace. It's going to go really far for you. Trust me on this. And then Wi-Fi is a big deal. If your internet connectivity is okay when you're typically working from home or have in the past, all of a sudden you have a few kids trying to do schoolwork, some kids streaming TV, the Xbox seems to be real popular right now, or several of them, depending on where you are in the house. It is important that you maximize your Wi-Fi specific to the priority you have. Set times when they can play games, set times when they can access the internet for their homework, which is equally as important as your work, and figure out how to make that happen. Look at the schedule that the school has put out, look at the schedule you have for work, see if there's any conflicts if you have bad bandwidth. If you have really great bandwidth and it's not an option, awesome. Please raise your hand and let us know. We'll probably send a few folks your way to help work there. And as I said, create family time during the day. I think that's probably the biggest and most important thing. It helps bring down the stress level of everybody. Try to do something fun, get outside. You might actually enjoy it yourself as well. So I would put that on the books.
Yeah, Dave, being here, I've noticed that it's just part of remote culture is you're going to have a few interruptions. And so things aren't going to be perfect. These are different times. And so just be prepared, be patient for other people. If you see a cat walk by or whatever, that's just part of being remote.
Yeah, dog stops in once in a while to let me know that he's hungry, which is a welcome adjustment. But yeah, you just got to be prepared for that stuff. So camera is really important too, right? Phil and I talk several times throughout the day, and even if it's a quick phone call or it might be a chat message, if you have the capability, take the time to turn on the camera. In this trying time, it's really important to have a little face contact, and it makes that communication a lot more interpersonal with your team. So I strongly recommend, if you have the ability to use your camera, that you do, and make sure that your office space is somewhat neatened up if you can, if you have the opportunity to do that. There are some cool tools you can do to like blur your background, things like that as well. Some applications will offer you. So Phil, why don't you give us a little bit of information on some of the essentials for the remote workforce from an IT perspective?
Yeah, so obviously everyone knows you're going to need some kind of computer or laptop, desktop or laptop to be able to work remotely. One of the most important things you can do is just make sure you're all up to date with Windows updates, with patching. You're going to be working in a different environment, and you want to make sure that you're fully patched. We've already seen phishing scams and things like that as part of this, and that people are looking, unfortunately, to take advantage of you during this time. So just make sure you're fully patched. That's going to cover most of what you're doing. So have your laptop and get it patched before you just kind of begin work. Mic and video camera, Dave talked a little bit about that. Our culture is cameras on, and that's good. It makes us have a connection to people, even people that maybe I've not met in person. I feel like I have a connection to, because we video chat every day. So a lot of people use external webcams. I like an external webcam just because the angle's a little better. So get you a webcam if you have one, and a good mic. A lot of people in our organization use headsets. Headsets kind of, especially if you have lots of other people in your home right now, a headset kind of isolates you, so you're not, your speakers aren't blaring and bothering other people. And you can use one of those noise canceling mics. So Those are all good things to have. Network, as Dave mentioned, strong Wi-Fi connection. Make sure you don't have any data caps. I think a lot of companies are lifting those right now, so that's good. That's good news. It could be that your router allows for you to prioritize traffic. So as Dave was talking about, the Xbox traffic might get a little lower priority right now than some of your work traffic that you need to do. Always password protect your network. I've heard people say, well, I just want to be neighborly and I just want to have my network open in case someone needs it or something like that. You should still password protect because that's what encrypts your traffic. If it's password protected, it's encrypted. So if you want to share your password with your neighbor, knock on their door and leave a post-it note or something like that for them. But always password protect your network. We talked about minimizing contention. Some routers allow for that, and if you do, you should kind of set that up. And then make sure you're close to your Wi-Fi repeater if you're using Wi-Fi, your Wi-Fi router, or use a repeater. Lots of routers today have where you can use an extender to extend your Wi-Fi network. Some of us have, as it relates to cell phone, you can make your calls that way. If you want to step into another room or whatever, make sure you have good coverage wherever you're at so people can hear you. I know sometimes in my house, there are hot spots and cold spots for cell phone coverage. So kind of scope those out. And then you have hotspot functionality. Some of us have hotspot functionality on our phone as kind of a backup. Go ahead and download those apps. If you're using the Microsoft suite, they have a great suite of mobile apps. So if something happens that your Wi-Fi goes out or it's saturated, you can back up to using your cell phone for those kinds of things. Collaboration tools. So we have the chat function. We were going to talk a little further about Teams. The Microsoft, being able to collaborate is key. Communication is key, and being able to communicate quickly is key. We see that all the time. We spend a lot of time all day, every day inside Teams, collaborating, chatting, checking in, and just a hi, how's your day going? Good morning, that kind of stuff. Have that water cooler talk the best you can, even though you're separated. Just say, hey, I'm just checking on you. How are you doing? So Google has options, Microsoft has options. We use a lot of Teams here. Remote file access. You need to be thinking about how your team is going to be able to access files remotely. You need some kind of group file storage. Again, we like SharePoint, Teams, OneDrive, that Microsoft suite. Something that's nice about if you store your files in the Office 365 suite, that SharePoint, Teams, OneDrive environment, you can collaborate on documents simultaneously. That's something that a lot of people didn't realize you have. So 2 or 3 people can be working on the document simultaneously. That's not true of traditional file share. So it's a good reason to have stuff in the cloud. Anyway, Dropbox is another one, Google Docs. You just have to have something that all of your people can access remotely. And honestly, from a security standpoint, it's the best place you can have it. Those people think about security in ways that we've never thought about. So they spend a lot of money and time around security.
All right, and then so you want to touch on some of the additional security measures you should take with respect to working in a remote work spot with cloud technology, just some good best practices here too.
Yeah, I think we talked a little bit about Wi-Fi. Make sure your Wi-Fi is secured with a complex password. Again, that's for your security as well, so that someone can't snoop on your traffic. And it's just important. It's an important part of your home security. Multi-factor authentication. I can't stress this enough. If an application allows for multi-factor authentication, you and your organization should be using it, full stop. It's the most secure thing you can do. If you're not familiar with that, I bet you've been using it for a long time in terms of your ATM card. So your ATM card is multi-factor authentication. You have to have both your card and your PIN. One is not good without the other. Multi-factor authentication inside of your network means you have your password, and then usually you have your mobile device or something other than just your password to authenticate. It will literally thwart 99.9% of hacking attempts. So it's the most important thing you can do. Again, we talked about the phishing thing. I've seen COVID phishing emails already. They're coming out. Be hyper aware. Don't blindly click on things right now. Don't blindly click on them anytime, but especially right now, things are, there's a lot of those phishing attempts happening right
And
now.
they're pretty tricky. They're pretty sophisticated right now to, you know, the hackers out there, they know that people are trying to work from home, and they understand that there's a lot of new communication opportunity, and they are pouncing on it. So if you have even any doubt about the validity of a message or an inquiry or an email, even the slightest one, I would definitely take it seriously. Don't click on any of this stuff. Some of the traffic that we're seeing from a cybersecurity perspective, where we monitor that for our clients and different service level offerings that we provide, quite a bit of traffic, as you might imagine, and a lot of it is bounced all around the world. So, you know, cyber attacks are a global phenomenon, and so is this crisis that we're in right now. So these type of attacks are happening on a global scale that's never been seen before. Please remain diligent.
Yeah, they're going to prey on the fact that people are working remote, that people want to help, and that there's a sense of urgency. So you will see, like, please help me, I need this right away. We see them come in our organization from Dave all the time, i.e. not really from Dave, but they spoof and say, hey, I need this right away. Let me tell you, if it's urgent and I call Dave, he's going to pick up the phone and say, yeah, that was me, that's urgent. Always use that phone as an option to validate the request.
We talked about OS patching and updates. We talked about cloud storage, and, you know, anti-malware, antivirus. That's a big deal as well. Make sure your devices are up to date. You know, those are the best minimal level things that you can do that Phil makes sure our organization is operating on, and the rest of our ArctiCare team and the software that we run to secure our environment. You know, one of the things that's really the reason we bring this up, some of this might seem like, well, of course we want our operating system to be patched, and of course we want to make sure that, you know, antivirus is up to date. What's happening right now is we have customers all over the place that are saying, hey, we have a couple people that never really had to work from home. We have to send them home with something. We had these old laptops that were sitting in the conference room. We want to fire these back up, and we want to just send them home so that they have something that they can use. And it's like, all right, that's okay, but nothing changes the fact that they have to be put back on the network and patched as far up as they can be before you send it home with your employee to then get on the internet and then potentially collaborate with your work type information. So if you're using older devices and things like that, please make sure that you guys take the time to patch them from an IT perspective, make sure they're protected when they get home, and put those things on the network. And if you need any help with that, or you're not certain about how to go about that, please call into us. We will help you get that done. It's not going to cost you anything. It's a service. We want to make sure that you have these things protected. We'll give you the advice you need. Please also be prepared for the fact that if you call us up and say, hey, I got this old laptop with Windows XP on it, we're going to say that's probably not something you want to send home with somebody too, right? So we have to use our judgment there. All right, so I want to take some time to introduce Microsoft Teams to you. Again, we use Teams quite explicitly throughout our organization. It is actually a cultural component at Arctic IT. I want you to understand a little bit about the app. First and foremost, I'll preface the conversation with Microsoft, in a worldly, I think, gesture, is offering Teams 6 months for free to organizations. Now, it is a baseline version of Teams that allows you to collaborate, chat, contact, video, message, that type of stuff. You have to also think about file sharing and document sharing as a component of that. Very cost effective. And one of the most important reasons that we recommend it and use it is not only because we're a Microsoft partner and that's pretty much our expertise, but it is truly what we consider an enterprise content management platform. Many of us in the business community are familiar with a technology called SharePoint. I like to call it the artist formerly known as SharePoint, because Teams brings together many other aspects of collaboration and enterprise content management that were challenges for people to take steps in with SharePoint, because it wasn't necessarily culturally binding to the people that needed to use it. So as you can see here, Teams provides a console. This is just a screenshot. Figured it'd be easier to use the content. And then we'll go into some live teams here in a little bit. But here we have Mary and Brooke on our marketing team. That is a picture of the individual when you're speaking to them if they're not on camera. So at least you have some type of facial recognition for who you're working with. If it's a customer that's not inside your environment, they're just going to have some letters associated with their name. And then when the Teams console kicks on, you'll notice that there's a bar across the bottom. First one is for your video camera, on or off, pretty simple. The next one is the microphone, on or off, mute, very simple. And then we have screen share. So you have the ability, depending on how many monitors you use. I have my laptop screen, which you all are looking at. I don't use a separate headset. I don't use a separate microphone, separate camera. I use the laptop and everything that's baked into it. I'm a frequent flyer. I travel a lot. I'm in a hotel, many different places all around the country. And this is the easiest for me. It's less to carry, it's less hardware. And as long as that microphone and that camera are working well, I'm in good shape. I don't need all the extra periphery, if you will. You have to find out what works for you. You'll notice that there's a chat component over there, which is has a couple lines in it with a little call out box. And then being able to add team members that are inside your network, your workspace. You typically don't add people that are external to your organization into Teams because, again, this is an enterprise content management tool. Although you do have the ability to share content outside of the organization, okay? You'll notice that if I click on the ellipse, which is the 3 dots there, I can change my audio and visual settings. There is some times where your monitor may have speakers and microphones built into it, and the laptop, you know, it's real smart, right? So it'll start to say, okay, which laptop and speakers do I want to use? For example, when I got onto the GoToMeeting, which is different than Teams, it immediately bound to my TV speakers. So if you want to adjust that, you're going to go into the show device settings in Teams. That will allow you to adjust volumes and preferences in all your audio and visual stuff. It also gets into some of the phone call capabilities. If you're not using the free version of Teams and you have a subscription, and you also have a calling plan in your Office 365 environment with Microsoft, you're also configure some of the behavior on how the phone works inside Teams. You might want to forward calls to your cell phone if you're out, or you're spending that time with your family in between some of your scheduled breaks while in your new working from home environment, right? You might want to enter full screen mode depending on what you're looking at. You'll see there that the video can be started with a blurred background, so everything except your body is basically blurred. Kind of looks like you're swimming through some fog if you move around too much. And that's pretty valuable, especially if you're in a hotel room or you're somewhere where there's a lot of traffic and you want to minimize that. Blurring the background is real important. You can also start recording. So if there is important content that you want to share with somebody that wasn't able to join your meeting for some reason, they weren't available at that time, real easy to start recording. And if you haven't done that before, it'll store the recording either locally or it'll use something called Microsoft Stream for your Teams meeting content that you actually recorded. So then from Stream, inside the Microsoft portal.office.com, you can then share and distribute that through other network or just send a link via email to the other people you wanted to share. Okay. All right. When you get into personal settings, so if you go up to your icon up in the top right corner of Teams and you come down, there are some personal settings that you can also establish as well. For example, my default status when I'm in a call, how do I want the application to behave if I'm showing my screen? Do I want it to go to do not disturb, for example, which is a good setting. You don't want Teams messaging popping up or interrupting you if you're presenting your screen. I have mine on do not disturb right now. Be right back, appear away. Those are all different things that you can set, right? All right, so one of the cool things about, we talked about culture is making sure that you have that human interaction. I know folks that have worked remotely for 20 plus years, And Phil was talking about this a couple days ago that, some of those folks, because they started doing this a long time ago, where the bandwidth and the capability for using a camera to conduct a meeting wasn't even an option, they still don't do it. For us, with having only 2 physical offices, an employee and client base that's all throughout the country, it is invaluable for our culture to be able to share that FaceTime with people. And we all understand that sentiment is lost in email. Inflection just doesn't exist. So it's really nice to have facial connection, especially as we're going through a really tough time with everybody. So make the effort if you can, even if you have to start the call on your camera and then maybe minimize incoming video to decrease the amount of bandwidth you need, or just drop your camera altogether. At least start the call with it so that you establish some connection with the person you're working with. It's tremendously valuable to us, and we know that it is to other people. That's why we make a point of telling you it a few times today, okay? So when you're in the chat application, most of us have used some type of instant messenger. If you had Skype in the past or Skype for Business, you may have used something like this. Google Chat, Yahoo Chat, not the most secure thing in the world, Yahoo Chat. Just want to throw that over the fence, but many of us used it years ago. And from chat inside Teams, you can do anything. You can send a file, type a message, share your screen, make a call. So you might get into a chat with somebody and all of a sudden it's like, why am I typing this? Just pick up the phone and let's have a conversation. So Teams gives you that ability from an app perspective to take that conversation and that exchange of information a little bit further, right? So you can make it quick. You can share information, you can share your screen, make a call. Keep that in mind that it does more than one thing.
Dave, while you're on that screen, I'm thinking about me working in an office and I'd be like, where's Dave? And I could peek my head around and see you were on the phone. Well, these presence indicators are a big part of our culture. We'll look and see, the reds or the yellows means they're not there right now. They're away from their office. And I think as you transition to kind of a remote workforce right now, knowing if someone is taking one of those breaks is important. You can see that, oh, they're yellow, that's why they're not answering me, or they're on the phone or whatever. So that stoplight thing is, I think, a big help for us.
Yeah, and one of the other things that we find really good about chat is it's not an email, right? So I really appreciate the fact that you sent me a chat request real quick and not an email that I had to sort through, find, and dig through. If you're actually offline and someone is trying to chat with you or ping you about something that either they're on a team with you about or whatever, you will actually get an email message saying that you missed the chat, but it doesn't double up. So if you're online and available, you'll get the chat request and you'll get the chat alert. If you're offline, you will get an email saying you missed the chat so you can check out maybe part of the conversation that was important to you. You also get to do some fun things. You can praise somebody, you can share a streaming video, you can add an appointment to someone's calendar, you can drop in some stickers, some GIFs, some emojis, like anything else, whether it's Instagram or Facebook, which my kids have told me repeatedly is officially for old people only. So it gives you a little bit of fun and flair that you can have inside the application. All right. So I'm going to take you into what I have is just a cloud-based environment of Teams, and I'll bring that up. So I have a demo environment that's not at ardicit.com. It's one that we just use for presentations and trying stuff out that's new. That brings up a good point too, that Teams, unlike any other application that we've seen in our history of working with Microsoft, and I'm just over 20 years now in being pretty much dedicated to the Microsoft world of technology. Teams gets updates at least every week as far as features, enhancements, new things that it's able to do, different ways to plug into things. It's quite remarkable how much R&D actually goes into the product. They've made some significant changes. Sometimes it's overnight. We've actually had clients call us and say, hey, who moved my cheese? And it's like, yep, someone definitely moved the cheese. It's not called meetings anymore, it's called calendar. Okay, well, why did they change that? Well, Calendar was integrated to Outlook in so many different ways, and even other applications, things like Dynamics and other business applications that are out there. So I think it's important to note that the Teams you see today is continuing to evolve pretty rapidly, and I think the use case and the unprecedented use case that it's being flooded with right now is going to help it evolve even more as we determine new work streams and different ways to use the tech. So I am in the web application of Teams, which isn't too vastly different than the desktop application. And for those of you that use Office 365, you may have already figured out that there's Word application and then there's the Word desktop application. If you go to edit different documents, it'll prompt you for what option you want. There are a limited set of features, which seems to also be growing if you use the web application. And then if you use the desktop application, there is many more features like Excel on an online web app and Word on an online web app are vastly different than those desktop applications where they're full feature and feature rich. And that's by design. So a web application has to work thin, it has to work anywhere, any device, anytime. So I can be using an Apple device, I can be using a Samsung or Google or Chrome-based device and a Windows application. As long as I have a browser and I'm able to get to office.com, I can have a pretty rich experience without having to download any software to that machine. And that's pretty astounding as you think about a remote workforce, right? So be thinking from not only from an IT, an administrator, or an executive perspective, you want to help your folks be as agile as possible as they're having this new experience if it's not something they've done before, working from home. And if you're not quite sure how to extend that that office.com experience to them, and maybe they didn't have a fully configured workstation before it went out the door, if you have questions about that, just please reach out to us. We'll give you some communication plans here after this session. We will help you get to where you need to be to help that person be functional. We don't want someone to be frustrated with their level of access or understanding at this time, in addition to everything else we're all trying to deal with, right? So I'm inside my Teams application. You'll notice here that on the left-hand side, I have a help menu. I have the ability to download the desktop app right here if I wanted to. I have OneNote, Stream, Planner, different applications in addition to the default with the files that I share, calls that I want to make, calendar, Teams, chat, and activity. All right, so I'm going to talk first about Teams in and of itself. So I have a Teams site that I created, and I'm using the term site. Teams does allow you to build a web-based collaboration workspace, and by default, it's going to create a site name for you, and then a default channel called General. You can have multiple channels inside a site. So if I have working from home as my default site, I have a general channel. I may want to hit more options. I want to add a new channel to my site, and I can say Teams education information, okay? I can put a description. I can set this channel security to be, if you can get into the team, you can get into the channels below it, or I can explicitly set unique privileges to this channel. This is an example of security that they just recently put into the app. And when I say recently, within the last few months. So being able to set security specifically to a channel is pretty important. Similar to where you might have a site in SharePoint. For those of us that have used SharePoint, you might have a sub-site with different security. You'll remember the term inheritance, right? So am I inheriting the security from the top level object above me? Not to go too far into Nerdville, but there's some similarity, some parity there, okay? So I'm gonna make this accessible to everybody in the team. And then do I want to show this in everyone's channel list? You may or may not want to check that box. So I'm going to hit add. It goes ahead and it creates a brand new channel. Now notice this channel has its own posts, files, and wiki. And I can even add additional applications to just this channel. So a channel is in fact a sub-site of the main team site that you've created. If you want to create a new team, which means you have a business reason to do so, and there are several different key business reasons. For example, if you're just using Teams for the first time and you need to get this deployed with some type of, I'll use the term governance. And I'm not using the term governance because it's a big honking effort, right? I'm using the term governance because you want to make sure that you have reasonable ways to share information with the people that need it. I might have a finance department team. I might have an HR department team, an executive team. So if you think about how we work in teams, that typically is going to be a good hierarchy for how you establish your base level teams. One example of how we use teams is we do different business development work for new customers or new projects that we're doing. If we have a customer per se, they might have a top level site or team, and then each individual project below them will have its own channel. We might have different people on the consulting and engineering team that are working inside those channels, but they're not all working on the same project. So why would they have to have all that information? And more importantly, why would I want them to get all those updates about something that they're not participating in? And that's really one key aspect here. You want to use this to collaborate and share information, but you don't want to be overbearing with the amount of information that's shared. I can put a post or a file in a team and not send an email to the person letting them know that I've done that. And that's a challenge for some people. Some people want to send you a text, give you a phone call, send you an email, and send you a piece of mail to let you know that they put an appointment on your calendar. So you want to make sure you're communicating in a proper amount of activity. So if I go here and I want to join or create a team, see a button here. Now I have what's called create a team. I can use templates where I can say this is the type of team template that I want to use. And you heard me use the term governance. You may even want to say, hey, you know what? Certain folks in a department have the ability to create a team. Why? Well, if you had 50 people in your finance and accounting department, and you didn't want all 50 of those people to have the ability to just create a team whenever they wanted, you might say out of a group of 50 that 5 or 6 people have the ability to create new teams. And you might then even want to say that I use a template to do that. That way, the team and the content and the folders that are in it make sense. So if I want to go ahead and build a team from scratch, the first thing it's going to say is private, public, or organization-wide. 9 times out of 10, you're going to create what's called a private team. Give your team a name. That's going to be the sample team. Team to demonstrate. I go ahead and create. Once it establishes the object, you'll see that it creates a brand new team object. And then I can start typing a name of a person, a distribution list, or what we call a mail-enabled security group in Office 365. So if I have finance department as a distribution list, I don't have to add all those 50 people. I just put finance department as my distribution list in this box, and automatically those people all get notified that they have been added to a team and they are invited to explore that team. Just as I said earlier, by default, I'm going to get a general channel, and I can add additional channels to it if I wanted. Posts can be anything here. Welcome to the team. I go ahead and hit return, and now that message is chronologically stored. This will continue to run perpetually and chronologically throughout time. So you can scroll up to the top or go back, or even search this team's post information in the general channel for information that you might have shared at one other time. So it keeps a chronological history. So keep in mind that this information is going to be inside that channel, and it's searchable, and it doesn't necessarily go away. So from a corporate governance perspective and an enterprise content, this is keeping track of all the different communications and activities that people have around what you've determined as a team. All right?
And Dave, after you add, if you add someone later, they have access to that historical information, which could be good or bad, just depending on what you're expecting to happen there.
Yeah, good point. You know, if you add somebody to the team, you know, make sure that you know that they see everything that the team can see, because you just said they're part of the team. So you have to make sure you manage security. At this time, in many people who might be using this for the first time, it's very easy for us to tell you, hey, just focus on getting the information you need to work on collectively and share. Use some high-level approaches to governance. We just bring this stuff up so that if you extend your use of this beyond the situation that we're in now for you know, a little while, you probably want to make sure that you put some thought into who has access to what. Is it an immediate concern at this time? You know, use it for collaboration. If it's your first time using Teams and you're just stepping into the pool, you know, use it for its first and best use. Chat, collaboration, document sharing, and know that you're doing it securely. If you want to break it down into teams and additional security levels, and you have the time to do that, or you need help and you want us to give you some guidance on what that configuration might be, please just ask. We're here to help you, okay? Next, files. So by default, this has some similarity to what we would call a traditional SharePoint. So if I wanted to go ahead and take some files, right? I have, we were doing some work with our friends at the Rasmussen Foundation in Anchorage, Alaska yesterday. They're using Teams to help collaborate and keep their mission going, and really applaud them for the work that they've been doing there. We were using some documents there. So I have a worksheet right here that I can drag in there, and it's just a blank Excel spreadsheet. And I have a Word document that I can drag right from my desktop into the team. One of the cool things about doing this here is that this is automatically now in Teams. I can take this off of my desktop. I don't need to have it there. If I wanted to collaborate with somebody on this, they can also open up this document or this Excel spreadsheet. We can all be working in it at the same time, and the application is automatically keeping track of the content each one of us adds and doing version control the entire life cycle of the document. And that's by default, right? So that's a pretty impressive place to be with that kind of technology, right? And when you're trying to work on something with somebody and you don't necessarily want to be sharing desktops but still working, while I'm in that Word document, I can actually see where my coworker is in the document, and I can even chat with them while I'm there. So if I open up this test document, now I'm doing that in the web application automatically in Teams, right? Right? You'll see here that I can also start a conversation inside the Word document. Right? I can have a conversation right here, chatting with people that I'm collaborating with, and they'll show up right over here in the top right corner of the app. And inside Microsoft Word, inside the Teams app, or the web app as you might call it, this is pretty full function. So real easy to collaborate, but even more so if I want to close this application, right? The chat that has occurred does stay within the Teams application, doesn't stay with the document. So if you have to send this out of the organization, it's not like they get to chat about it too. We had that question yesterday. Hey, we might not want to send our chat information out with the document, right? That's important. But if I actually went here and I said that I wanted to open inside Word. I can open it inside the regular Word application. While I'm doing that, inside Word on the desktop edition, I still have full collaboration capability if someone else in the organization wants to also be working in that doc, and it can save. If I want to do something called check it out, in other words, I want to check out the document, work on it, and then check it back in, Teams also supports that very similar SharePoint functionality where we have what's called check-in, check-out, revision control. The checkout option is down here under more with this. This is a feature that was added not too long ago. People were like, hey, I don't want to have 6 people working on the document at the same time. I need to be able to check it out, put my content in and check it back in. That way we're not overlapping or maybe colliding with each other, right? So little things have started to trickle in that we're used to in that SharePoint world, depending on how much we adopt it. Right, so I wanted to make sure you understand that you can get documents in and out of there. From a wiki, we can go in here to a wiki and we can say, okay, I want to add some new information to the wiki. I can name a page, I can put section, I can put content, I can add new sections. So this is just information that as we evolve our use of Teams, say for example, we're working with a customer. We might have some information on new activity going on in their business, new leadership that's taken place inside their organization. We want to make sure that we're aware of those changes because it may affect how we're going to engage with that customer. So we have our CRM system that we use, but when we get into opportunity-specific changes, we may use the wiki to say, here's the baseline information on this customer when we're working with them on this particular project or engagement that everybody in the team needs to know. So that's kind of like the wiki specific to that opportunity and or customer, right? And then I saved this for last because this is pretty amazing. From an application perspective, being able to add apps into Teams is really, it's daunting with amount of capability that this application itself has provided just in the last 6 months. So you'll see here things like Planner. Arctic IT is using Planner in our executive team where we have tasks that we have to complete. And I want to put that out there so that not only do I see it inside the team, but it drops it on my calendar. It sends me alerts automatically. So from a strategic planning and leadership perspective, we're just really starting to catch traction with that Planner app and putting stuff out there so that we don't have to put it in 3 places to remember to do it. And more importantly, it helps us be accountable to each other and have a visual representation of where we are on status, right? Power BI are different dashboards and reports that are out there, but I'll just scroll through this slowly. These are all the different types of applications that have now built applications for Teams. So these are third-party providers that have gone ahead and said, okay, we're going to build an app that's inside of Teams since it's become so prolifically used, right? So there's a couple real good ones out here, everything from CRM apps that are built into Teams, collaboration activities where you want to assign strategic activities to different folks and have stakeholders be in part of the team and automatically communicate with them on clock on when things are due. There's education tools. There are software development tools. So one of the things, if you're an IT service professional that's joined us today, or you have some IT responsibility in your organization, or you're just a person that is willing to take on new technology and figure it out inside your group, whether it's a small or large business, it doesn't matter. If you get access to and have the security or the ability to create your own teams, and I'm a big fan of allowing teams to be initially organically adopted, okay? Initially and organically adopted. Give your folks the ability to create their new team, play around with it, explore it. They can't break it. I know that there's probably some folks on the phone that are saying, "Oh, I can break it," and that's okay. If you think you've broken it, give us a call. We're willing to help. Again, this is a community service message. If you're looking to help with this or get help with this, we want to give you a mechanism to call in, ask us for assistance. We will put you in a queue, kind of as a first come, first served basis to get to your calls. Everybody at Arctic IT uses Teams every day. We'll figure out a way to get somebody to dial up and give you some assistance. But give each person on your team, their own team, so that they can go in here and add a few apps, maybe into their team and explore and be a little bit be creative. The less afraid they are to use this, the more quickly they'll adopt it, and the better chance you have at collaboration. All right. So I'm going to switch back to our PowerPoint here. All right. All right, so there are some additional links that you have here. There is some end user training, some overview videos. There's quite a few YouTube videos. Some of them are an hour long, so I don't know how much patience you have for that type of stuff. If you've hung in with us for the last hour, maybe you can do the whole hour, but there's a few of them that are 8-10 minutes long. Then there's also some best practices for effective meetings with teams specifically. And then there's a couple things here that we have. It's not from Microsoft, but it has to do with making your remote workforce more secure. And then one thing we want to make sure you understand, and I mentioned this earlier, you can get Teams for free for 6 months right now. Microsoft figured that everybody needs a way to get this done, and they have the ability and the infrastructure to support something like this on a global scale. You can do that. If you are a government customer, and there's a few of you that are on the phone that we work with, there is a separate trial for Teams for government as well. So it is hosted inside what we call the GCC, Government Community Cloud. If you need any more information on that or help taking advantage of it, please let us know. Some of the things we showed you today aren't all available. Like there's not a call plan in that free version because you can't integrate it to your phone. So there is some limitations on the free version, but for just baseline collaboration, you're going to get pretty far with it. Okay. All right. So we'll help you get set up on it. We'll help you get started, answer the questions that you have. Contact your account manager if you're one of our existing clients. Remote workstations, Microsoft Teams, Office 365. Let us know how we can help you be more productive. Extremely important for us to make sure that our clients are staying as productive as they can. That's going to pay dividends for all of us. If the least we can do is help you take advantage of some technology that maybe you haven't already, that you have at your fingertips or want to explore, it's going to help the whole community, and we know that. Any other folks that aren't already engaged with us or on some type of service contract, go ahead and email us at connect@arcticit.com. What that means is we'll take that, we'll enter it as a ticket into our system, and someone will reach back out to you as soon as possible to help you get the information that you need. Okay. We are going to do a similar session to this next Thursday. We had so much demand that after we sent out the message for today that we couldn't fit everybody, which is a first. We've actually never had that situation. So we are going to do this again next Thursday if anybody is interested. So we're right at the top of the hour. I don't know how many questions you have. I don't see too many in the chat.
Nope, I don't see either.
Okay, so if you have additional questions, please reach out to us on the connect@arcticit.com. Thank you, Phil, for helping me out there. And again, we're in a tight spot. Everybody understands that. It's an amazing time in history. I mean, there's people that we do business with that they've already let us know that they don't know that they'll recover from this kind of challenge in their business. And it's extremely upsetting for us to hear something like that. It's one thing to have struggles in your business and have partners that can help you through it, but our thoughts go out to everybody that's figuring out, what the new normal is going to be when the dust settles for this. And if there's anything at Arctic IT that we can do to help you through this, whether it's back up your operations or help you get everything up in the cloud because you have to close temporarily to weather this, or even collaborate remotely like we talked about today, please don't hesitate to ask. That is the one thing we can do to help our clients and the community get through it. So please reach out. So with that, I'll let you guys get back to your day, and hopefully you got something valuable out of your time with us today. And we wish you all the best. Keep in touch with us and let us know if there's anything that we can do.
Okay, with that, we'll go ahead and close it out. Thank you everyone for attending.